Welcome to the State of the Pork Industry Report, brought to you by Neogen. Neogen is committed to being your trusted partner in the swine industry, delivering optimized solutions and technology for more than 20 years. With a dedicated network of scientists and technical experts in the field, Neogen's goal is to meet the needs of swine producers. To learn more, visit neogen.com or contact your Neogen representative. My name is Jennifer Scheich. I serve as editor and brand leader of Farm Journal's Pork. I have the privilege of spending my days covering pork industry issues and news, as well as telling stories of the people in our industry and exploring topics to help the industry grow. I'm excited to take a look at the third quarter of 2025 and to look forward to Q4 through the lens of our experts, Dr. Kara Hayden, Adam Managers, Randy Keeker, and Brad Eckberg. Welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good to be here.
Good afternoon.
Well, I don't know about you, but it's a little dreary over here in Eastern Illinois today. Are you guys getting any sun or any weather yet?
It's pretty dreary in Northeast Iowa.
Yep. Rainy, drizzly, cold.
Randy,
Yes.
yours looks familiar, so
Yep, I'm not too far from you.
no.
It's the same
Well-
in Western Illinois.
Yeah. 'Tis the season. It finally feels like we're really settling into fall. And it's been a long time since we've talked. So what's been going on? Anybody had any interesting trips or anything exciting going on lately?
Adam.
Yeah, my sister-in-law got married over in Switzerland, so of course we had to go see the wedding, and the wedding took place at Lake Luzerne. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. So if you get some free time, don't be afraid to Google Lake Luzerne, and their house is directly on the lake. You can fall out of the yard and land in the lake, but the scenery is just absolutely beautiful. And then my wife and I left baby with grandma and grandpa for a week, and we went over to Scotland and got to visit people that we've purchased dogs from and see their home and see the experience over there. So we had a great 2.5 weeks and can't wait to go back.
That sounds so
Nice.
fun. Sounds a little more exciting maybe than where you went, Randy, but I know you've been doing some traveling for the industry too.
Yeah, I went to DC for our second trip with the PLI group, the Pork Leadership Group, and that's in conjunction with the Illinois Pork Producers National Pork Board. So we went out there in September for their fall legislative session and got to experience my first Bacon Fest, and that was pretty interesting and enjoyed that. And other than that, just sold a couple crops of calves and getting ready to hunker down for the winter and cut some wood here in the next couple weekends.
Awesome. How about you, Kara? What's new with you?
I just got back from a kind of a whirlwind trip to Colorado for the Angela Basinger Advancing Animal Welfare Together Symposium, which is like multi-species. And so it was a blast. I always love that conference. And the highlight for me is always these salmon veterinarians talking about salmon welfare. So it was a really cool conference. The focus was all about transportation. I came home with a lot of things that I think we do better than others in the swine industry and some things we do worse. So I love that cross-species meeting. It's really cool.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Sounds fun. How about you, Brad?
Well, work related. Went to there's some really good conferences I went to. The Carthage Conference was really good over there in Illinois, and then the Layman Conference was really good as well. Both really great conferences. And personal wise, went to Vegas here a few weeks ago and didn't win enough to quit work. But so was my life. But that was a fun trip. And then with the fall and everything in Minnesota, you got to take advantage of it. So spent some time up north, doing a little rustic camping and getting away from civilization.
That sounds nice. It seems like there's been some decent camping weather this fall and maybe on the warm side of it where I'm at, but nonetheless, chance to get out there. I can't say that I feel like you guys are all way more exciting than me. I maybe I was at the same conferences you were, Brad. Those were good. My youngest is in 6th grade now, and so I've been chasing her around cross country courses, and so it is just reminding me that I am not the same age I was when my oldest daughter started running cross country. So something's happened in there, but I've had fun watching her, and then our son, who's a senior, so I'm going through the senior process again. Um, our county 4-H judging team that my husband and I coach won the American Royal 4-H livestock judging contest. So at our house, that's kind of like
Nice.
pretty exciting deal. So it was just it was fun to see all those kids kind of, come up through that program and grow, and then to see all that pay off with a win was pretty cool. So
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's fun. And,
I
and
always get stuck with the junior high kids and the little kids, and Dan kind of works with the older kids, but we're all in it together, we say. But I give him the kudos on that. He really got him there, and it was a good time. And yeah, now we're back to, it seems like, kind of back into the grind. Work's busy. I feel like there are so many big headlines and stories and so much going on right now. But I think if I stop and look back for me, and maybe it was because of the events that I attended, there's two words that have really stood out to me this fall, and that's disease elimination. I feel like there have been a lot of conversations at some of the national meetings that we've been to talking about elimination of disease, whether that's PED or PRRS, or things in between. I guess I wanted to maybe start with you, Kara, because I know you were part of some of those meetings and more. Is there a consensus on where the industry should go next when it comes to disease elimination?
I mean, I'm really excited about all the talk because I feel like it's been building and building and building, and I feel like we finally got momentum, and I think the veterinary industry is on board. We've got US SHIP now, which I think is a game changer. And so I've heard a fair amount of talk about Minnesota and some Mycoplasma pneumoniae elimination. To me, the one I think that has the most traction right now is PD. And so I know Pork Board has put together a working group. They've got a 5 kind of phase plan that they're in phase 1, which is kind of this communication status. The next step will be reducing PD and finishing, then regional collaboration, state collaboration, and then national collaboration. And so I think we're already headed down that path. US SHIP approved a PED clean certification standard, and then a PED monitored status. They're doing kind of pilot projects to see what that could look like. And so to me, PED is really exciting. I think that ball is rolling, and I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Well, you guys all deal with swine disease in different capacities every day. If you could eliminate any disease right now from the US swine herd, what would it be and why? And, what do you think the industry needs to prioritize? Because I know what I keep hearing is that the industry really wants to know what everybody thinks, at the ground level. What's the biggest problem in your mind? I don't know. Who wants to kick it off? Randy?
Yeah, I can kick it off. I would agree. I think PED is probably the right one to go after, just because I think it's, you don't have the aerosol or through the air transmission, so I think it maybe is a little bit easier to tackle. But for me, the one that I would like to see eliminated would be the PRRS, and just because the variability that we've seen with that disease over the last couple of years, seeing it's become more viremic and harder to deal with, and then it's also seems like, well, we had a PRRS season in the past, and now we had more infections or lateral breaks with PRRS in the spring and the summer than we typically do. I mean, we're usually gearing up this time of year to combat that disease, and it hit us a lot at a different time this particular, last quarter and even last year. And so, and then the methods that we've tried to use in the barns that have been successful in the past doesn't seem to be doing the trick now. I think the significance of the disease and the viremic increase in it has really been a tough challenge, at least in our neck of the woods that we've seen. So that's my vote as PRRS, but I know that one's a tough one to get done.
I couldn't agree more, Randy. If I got to pick anyone, it would be PRRS. That's the one I want to get rid of the most, but yeah.
Well, what about you, Adam? What are you seeing on your side of things?
I'm a little torn. I do agree. If all the diseases that we fight with, if I was to get one in the sow farm, I would pick PED over the other PRRS. It's just a quicker cleanup and not quite as devastating to the overall production of the farm. And in PRRS, it's devastating for pig flow, and then the employees in the farm. It's just a long drawn out. And Randy said it. Viruses are taking longer and longer to clean up. But for the overall industry, the last 2 years we've had a very strong industry, and there's been 18, 19, 20 months of profitability in a row for us, which the pig cycle's up and down, and pig farmers have selective amnesia. We forget what 2023 was like, and so there'll be some new farms built, and we'll increase our supply over demand, and prices will drop again. But part of what has made our industry profitable, unfortunately, are some of those disease breaks where we're not oversupplying the pigs. So I'm a little bit torn on it. If we eliminate the diseases, that's great for the people working in the barns, overall health of the pig. But the downside of it is there's probably going to be some of our colleagues that are no longer raising pigs, because it's not going to take as many sows to produce the number of pigs that we need. So it's a big tail, a big wheel. um, I'm just torn a little bit about the overall eradication of them. Is it the right thing to do for the animal? Probably, absolutely. Is it the right thing to do for our overall business? I'm not so sure on that one. And I think a little bit differently than a lot of other people on that subject. And I just would not want to see more of our colleagues going away, because they wouldn't be needed anymore.
What do you think, Brad? What do you see as being one of the biggest problems?
Well, my first concern is what Dr. Hayden and other veterinarians are going to do if we get rid of all of these diseases. So want to make sure they're not out of a job. But jokingly, right? But yeah, obviously PRRS, PED, right? 1, 2, however you want to look at that. I guess you didn't say necessarily just in North America. So obviously ASF would be one that no thank you, don't want it. But from a global perspective, obviously don't want to put anything at risk from a trade perspective within our industry here in the U.S. And then I guess if I had to pick a specific disease here in the U.S., I would say I'll say like an ASUS, something that with a late term dead and finishing, obviously can really be demoralizing to staff, right? I mean, how many times, if you're out there in the barns, do you say, we're about ready to start marketing and, we're 2% on mortality. And the next thing you know, you're closing out at 5.5%, 6% mortality because those late term deads. And obviously from a financial standpoint, for companies, it can be quite the impact as well.
Well, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen this too. Just recently, I suppose it was about a month ago, Scott D and Gordon Spronk called for a transformational change when it comes to PRRS in a Viewpoint article that was in the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association. And basically, they hopped on the Pork Podcast with me to talk about why they think now is the right time to eradicate PRRS and eliminate it from the U.S. And Scott was talking about 20 years ago when he was serving as, I believe it was president of AASV. He tried to call for the national elimination of PRRS then, and he basically said it wasn't the right time, we weren't ready, but now we are. And so I'm just curious, Carrie. We've talked a little bit. Disease elimination is obviously not new. So any lessons that you think we can learn from history as we start kind of stepping into being more focused on that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super helpful to look at the past and what we've done in the past, because we're acting like disease elimination is this new novel thing. And it is for those of us who are a little bit younger in the industry, but older people still remember pseudorabies and when we eliminated pseudorabies. And I bet there's still people in the industry today who remember hog cholera or classic swine fever. So classic swine fever, hog cholera, that was eliminated in 1976. Pseudorabies, they kind of started pilot projects in the early 80s, like 1983 to 1987. That project officially started in 1989. And it was a project that was backed by state, federal, industry, producers, I mean, everybody was on board with that program, that eradication. And so it started on January 1 of 1989. And in 2004, commercial swine in the United States were declared free of pseudorabies. And so if we look like from the start of pilot project till that disease is gone, 21 years from the day that the actual eradication started to elimination, 15 years. And so, I mean, there's a precedent that we could make some drastic changes in our industry in just 2 decades. I mean, in my career, we could see some crazy changes with eliminating viruses. And so I think now that we've got US SHIP, that's going to really help us be able to move forward. And I think once we get some of these programs back in place and we get back used to it, it could be something that we could just start checking off the list, would be my hope.
Mm-hmm. You know, Brad, I feel like you've kind of also have a unique perspective that you get the chance to talk to quite a few different producers. What do you think the industry is asking for? And especially, you know, Adam brought up how it impacts the marketplace and impacts, you know, some people's ability to stay in business, honestly. So talk to a little bit from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and there's cons, right? Depending on what side of the sword you're on, I guess, right? From a pharmaceutical standpoint of veterinarians to, you know, obviously from an overall industry perspective. But I mean, like, right, the PRRS-resistant pig is a heavy topic out there in the industry, and there's a lot of excitement around it because there's so many producers that struggle with PRRS, especially in Minnesota and Iowa and those densely populated areas. And it's, you know, people are clamming for that type of you know, opportunity to not have PRRS around, right? That's exciting stuff, you know. On the downside of that is, you know, we export from an industry, what, 27% of pork that we produce. Well, with less PRRS, obviously there's going to be more healthy pigs, more pounds of pork, and obviously what are we going to do from a consumption? And you know, the National Pork Board and Taste What Pork Can Do slogan, I think, is a fantastic one that we've chatted about before in these sessions. But you know, we need to consume more pork, you know, export more pork. Looks like, you know, there's some frameworks of deals that, you know, even came out today with some countries in Southeast Asia, which is great, hopefully opening some borders. But, you know, I can be a pessimist from time to time. And I'm just, you know, obviously, you know, concerned about, you know, producers that are smaller to mid-size. And, you know, if there are more pork and prices go down, are they going to be able to survive, right? And, you know, I think that's a little bit of an unknown. But, I mean, bottom line is no one likes dead pigs, nobody at all. And, you know, there's obviously opportunities when health issues arise. But I think it'll all kind of work itself out. But there might be some pain in between then. So, I guess to answer your question, there's optimism out there from the industry, especially in those pig dense areas. But there's also some uncertainty, you know. And as a business owner, I'd be you know, concerned potentially of how it's going to impact my company. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, practically speaking, you know, disease elimination has some challenges for those that are working in the barns. I mean, there's a lot that's on your shoulders when it comes to that. So, you know, Adam, what are some of your thoughts when it comes to how that impacts your team and how that would impact what you guys do as a farm?
Yeah, and with PRRS closures, you know, a lot of those are pushing a year now before we are eliminating the virus. And you know, there's just a lot of extra steps for the PRRS elimination protocols. There's great veterinarians all over the industry, and we have really solid plans out there that will eliminate virus. It just takes a high level of execution of those protocols from all team members involved in the farm. And you know, the biggest challenge I think that we have is making sure every employee that touches a pig or works with a pig understands why we're asking them to do exactly what we're doing to eliminate the viruses. To me, that's the biggest challenge. You know, we all have a little bit of turnover. There's new people coming in, and our employees today, very few of them were raised on a farm and have never worked with pigs before. So we have to recognize that and make 100% sure that all of our employees understand exactly why we are asking them to do, what they're doing. That allows us to better execute those elimination programs, protocols, and have a lot of success, because it is a lot of hard work and a lot of extra time and effort. And it's very demotivating for a team to get close to the end of a closure and then have that virus come back again. That just really, it's like a punch in the gut there. It's like, oh man, we did all this work for 9 or 10 months and we just didn't get to the finish line. And I'm sure this happens at a lot of farms. We've all experienced that, and that's the biggest struggle, making sure everybody is on the same page and executing at a high level.
Yeah, and Randy, labor wise, can you accommodate all those extra needs? Do you have enough labor to do that, or how does that change how you guys go about your days?
My labor changes every day. Who I've got today is not who I'm going to have tomorrow. So, Adam hit it perfectly. Is you got to execute at a high level. And in the wean to finish world, we're a lot smaller. We don't have all of our employees under one roof, and we're traveling to multiple sites. And we talked earlier before the call that we've gone over a year without PED in our system, and I think PED is something that's transferred usually in by employees, probably 90 or 95% of the time. So you got to have that great execution of biosecurity. But there's times where you get shorthanded, and we've got sites that we're sharing labor between multiple different sites, and you got to be diligent on your procedures and your protocols. And there's times where we get really shorthanded, and I've got to hire vaccination crews or load crews, and we try to mitigate that, but we can only be so many places at once. So we got to do cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's. But one of the thing I'd be interested as we continue to talk about this and it evolves from an elimination standpoint, what role are the Packers going to have in this? Because for me on the wean to finish side is, typically I'll get a break in late finishing when I have a dirty truck or even a truck that I assume is clean come back to my facility, and we might have a pig walk on and then walk back off, or we might have a transport driver that, he's new and he walks into the facility, and now my wean to finish barn 2 weeks before it's getting new wean pigs is positive for PED. And if somebody doesn't do a good enough job washing, I've now infected that barn. So my question would be is how involved are these packing plants going to be in the testing standpoint from their lairage areas to ensure that some of these diseases are not going to be brought back? Because if we as producers, if we put all that cost on the producers and the management companies and the veterinarians, and we put all the time and effort into it, how are we going to make sure that it's on the very back end we're covered as well? So a lot of things to consider, definitely.
And the biosecurity, conversation that you bring up, and just some of the challenges at all the different phases that we run into, kind of have me wondering too, like this is fall and I'm watching the wind blow like crazy outside, and, the rain's coming in, and the, temperatures are dropping. And so I feel like we didn't really have this big break from PRRS, but I guess 'tis the season of where we officially start thinking about PRRS breaks. But as we were discussing earlier, we're hearing more about other diseases, having breaks right now. What are some things that we need to do to minimize these breaks? Any tips or reminders, Kara, as we kind of head into this time where it's more typical to see this happening?
Yeah. I couldn't agree with Randy more on trucking, right? There's been some really interesting work done on trucks going into and coming out of packing plants. And man, oh man, trucking is one of our biggest challenges in the industry, with probably a mechanism for moving a lot of disease around. But in general, if we're talking about eliminating disease from the country, if we're talking about trying to reduce spread just in your region and to your individual farms, I have just started putting biosecurity kind of in 5 buckets. And then I just think about what can I control what I can control, and the things that I can't control, should I be trying to control those? And if not, right, we control what we can control. But supplies is the first one. People is the next one. Pig entry and exit would be the third. Feed and air would be the 5th. So supply entry, what's coming into your farm, semen delivery, vaccines, anything a vaccinating crew is bringing in. Are we being really diligent about bringing those things in? People are coming in, visitors are coming in, auditors are coming in, lunches are coming in, personal items are coming in. And then also like pit pumpers coming onto your site, even if they're not coming into your barn. What are you doing to control your people, to train your people, to make sure that they understand? Pig entry and exit, that's where that trucking comes in. We've got not only like quarantining where we're bringing in gilts, but every truck that comes onto your site is a risk. And we need to be auditing those trucks, making sure they're clean, making sure that our caregivers are trained. Like, hey, if something doesn't look right, don't let them on your site. Controlling that clean, dirty line, like Randy said, it is not unusual for pigs to go onto the trailer and then back. We need to be protecting that clean, dirty line. Feed, there's been some great work on feed being a vector for moving virus around. We're getting more and more data on different mitigants that are available. And so what could it look like for you to use a mitigant? But even if you're not going to go that far, what does it look like to have a conversation with your feed mill and their biosecurity and how they're keeping the feed mill clean? What order is feed getting delivered in? There's all sorts of things outside of spending the money on a feed mitigant. And then air, right? That's something some of us can do air filtration at sow farms because it makes sense financially. We can't necessarily do that in finishers at this point, although there's some really cool stuff going on with doing some filtration of finishers for this fall that I'm aware of. But filtration, making sure that we're checking and really double checking, making sure that everything is working, that our filters are the right age, that our pre-filters are looking good. I mean, there's just so many things on that list, but I would just say everybody should write down those 5 buckets and just start going through that list and saying, what do I need to be double checking going into this fall in those areas?
Yeah, that's definitely good reminders. And one of the things that, you know, I've heard some of you guys say before, but I think this is all great, but it doesn't really work unless everybody gets behind it from an ownership standpoint. So Adam, how do you think that sense of ownership can really help improve the health of a barn?
Yeah, and you know, where the farms that I get to work with, we are in extremely high dense areas. We can count finisher roofs from multiple of our sow farms, and you know, this last year we've really seen some really good success with overall sow production numbers, and our PSYs are definitely higher than what we could imagine we've been, and that's taken buy-in and ownership from everybody on the farm. And it really goes back to, you know, just being consistent and executing at a high level. And then in regards to biosecurity, I really challenged our teams on inspecting what we're expecting. So, you know, Kara said it very, very clearly. When trucks come to the farm, if they look dirty, send them away. If there's something not right, don't load the truck, because we know there's pigs that come back and forth. If, you know, visitors are coming to the farm, maintenance teams are coming to the farm, you know, be with them when they're bringing their tools, supplies, whatever, and, you know, really inspecting what we're expecting. And as our farms take more ownership into that and buy into it, we are getting a much higher level of execution. And you know, biosecurity is just, you know, reducing the risk to your farm. And the more we can reduce our risks, the more that we take ownership of what we can control, the better results we're going to see.
Yeah. Well said. Well, I'd love to transition just a little bit in light of time to talk about nutrition and performance as we head into the season. New crop corn being fed to pigs, cooler temperatures often means that the pigs grow faster. So Randy, how do you plan for the heavier weights, both internally and with the packer? And what are some of the things that you're thinking about right now during this time of the year?
Well, in our company, we have a weekly, you know, health call, production call, and a lot of the thing, you know, probably for the last 2 months, we've been asking, hey, how soon are we going to have new crop corn? And so that's been a common theme. And we've got 2 separate feed mills, and we had 2 different timelines. And so when we knew that was going to hit, I do a lot of the load projections for the people that we raise pigs for. And so I kind of bake that into my load projections, knowing that once I'm going to get new crop, then I'm going to try to maybe sell a little bit heavier, a little bit quicker, so I don't get too heavy. So communication on that is key and vital. And then, we only usually get, 10-day forecasts on temperatures, but we definitely saw a huge impact when we went from those 80, 85-degree days down to 70-degree days, along with the new crop corn. So even with all that said and all that planning, we still got behind. We didn't get a lot of the loads that we were asking for because everybody was asking for them. So 3 of the 4 plants that we send pigs to are all receiving pigs over 300 pounds. So we're struggling to try to get the weights down and get the right amount of pigs out. But I do know that there's a couple plants that we sell to. They're starting up Saturday kills probably for the next 3 to 4 weeks as we go into the holiday season. So that'll probably alleviate some of that. And then, we just got to make sure when we're loading those bigger animals that we take our time. We have clean, dry surfaces for them to walk on, and get the guys to take smaller groups so we don't have that transport loss. Because I think Brad mentioned earlier, when you get a pig past that 250 pounds, all your costs are sunk, and you've got a lot of time and money into that pig. And the last thing you want is for it to go down on the trailer, and that really affects your bottom line and your overall performance. So, and we try to mitigate that by, doing some audits, being in there and while they're loading pigs, and sometimes even helping them out, and just making sure that process is going smoothly.
Brad, what are you seeing when it comes to market weight averages right now, and how does transportation loss figure into that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at kind of from what are market weight averages, throughout, just from a U.S. from a live weight, it's usually around that 285 pound averages is kind of where we're at these days when closing out a group, right? But when you get into that June, July, August timeframe, temps rise, right? Consumption goes down, growth goes down. You're going to see those, closing weights, or from a processing standpoint, in that 275 range, 272 to 279 ish type range. But then, like Randy was just talking about, now we're starting to have some 300 pound market weights out there. So now, probably in this October, November timeframe, we're going to start seeing those closeouts and marketing in that around 290 ish range and stuff. And then right around first of the year, it'll kind of balance itself out until we basically do it all over again. So from a transportation standpoint, during the summer, you'll see, well, from an overall, let's just say from a dead on truck, or, transportation loss that we're losing, about 0.25% is for a closeout group. So what, 2.5 pigs maybe per 1,000. From a transportation loss, which is, again, too much, like Randy again said, like the cost that goes into it. But during the summer it'll fluctuate a little bit. Maybe it'll gain 0.1%. Same thing, like in the fall, you'll see 0.1% where, we're stocking. What some companies will do is maybe your normal at a 290 pound average is 165 pounds on a truck, where then maybe they'll go up to that 270, 272, 275 per truck. 175 on a truck. But then when the pigs get heavier, you need to reduce it back down. So now, making sure the pigs have enough space on the truck. So yeah, I mean, you're going to see the transportation loss go up a little bit. And obviously you don't want to forget about the transportation part, especially with like wean pig, feeder pigs, making sure that, those trucks are getting buttoned up a little bit for travel in the cold weather and stuff. So obviously, we talk about this every year, right? I mean, summertime, market weights are going to go down. Then new crop corn comes, weights are going to come back up. And, like Randy said, we're trying to get caught up on our weights. It happens every single year that we do it. It's just, what can we do to obviously minimize any transportation loss, and obviously try to find that sweet spot for marketing throughout the whole year.
Yeah. And I was just thinking that so many of these things that we talk about, it's like, this this isn't new. It's basic things that we do, but it's fall time too. And as we think about barns, what are some of the things that we've got to be thinking about when it comes to our barns, Adam? How do we need to manage them differently as we're in this fall season and we start looking towards winter?
Yeah, we're definitely, in that transition from, summer to fall, fall to winter. That seems like that transition gets shorter and shorter. There's less of fall and we're more from summer right into winter. But, ventilation and airspeed, I mean, that's just one of the most important things we can do. So, making sure all of our heaters are working, making sure all of our actuated inlets are working, just making sure we're getting the right air speeds, the right airflow. It's just a big complicated wheel, and we utilize a fall winter checklist that every farm has, and it just walks right down everything that we need to check, and just make sure we're in operation before we need to use it. That's the key, is having your barns ready when that transition happens. So we're not scrambling there at last minute to try to do anything. But as more and more OPG and Prop 12 farms are out there, I think we're finally understanding that ventilation in a OPG or Prop 12 barn is extremely, extremely important to keep them sows comfortable and provide the right environment for them. So, how do we do that? It's just be prepared and be proactive, making sure all of our systems are in proper operational before we need them.
And 'tis the season for pit pumping as well. And Kara, you're already, I know that's on your mind right now. And why? Why is that? Why is it so important for us to be thinking about that process even more than ever, maybe right now?
Yeah, even more than ever. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious to say, right? But pretty much all of the nasty pathogens that we don't want are shed in feces. And so they're in manure. And there's been a variety of studies that have looked at different manure storage and different temperatures. There's all kinds of stuff that have been looked at. And the bottom line is that there is a certain amount of virus that can survive for very likely several days and could be several weeks, like even into the months, depending on the situation. And so we need to be looking at every bit of manure that we see as PRRS positive, PED positive, Seneca positive, because it's very likely that it is. And again, it seems obvious, but like the work has been done now. Dr. Daniel Lynn Harris just came out with a study last summer, just looking at proximity to pumping and the field around the barn getting pumped and how that increases greatly the likelihood of a disease break. And so, I mean, we just need to not drive through it, not walk through it, go around the block, avoid it, be aware of when it's happening. And especially, I just got kind of our MSHMP report on PED, and PED does not look very good. And I'm super sad to see the amount of PED that we have prior to a lot of pumping getting done, because getting breaks around the time of pumping is about the worst time when you've got fresh shedding going into the pit. That manure is very likely going to have viable virus in it. And so, man, I just can't caution people enough on pit pumping, manure management, avoiding it, keeping it out of your barns, and just trying to keep it from getting spread around in manure this year.
Yeah. I spent some time this summer with Mike Winger and his son Nick going around talking about new building versus remodeling barns. And I ran a series not too long ago about that if you didn't get a chance to see, it's really interesting, I think, to hear their story of their family is pretty cool. And but to kind of see some of his thoughts on that industry right now. And so it seems like, some of the builds just aren't penciling out very well. And so quite a few people are considering remodeling some barns. And so I'm just curious, Brad, as you think about kind of building versus remodeling, what do you think is one of the very most important things producers need to discuss before they start in that process?
Great question. Well, if I'm looking at a remodel, right, I've probably got a 10, 15-year-old barn. So what I'm looking at is what is my number one cost? Feed. So what is the right feeder for me to put in my barns? A couple things to think about with that is, how big are the pigs getting? Making sure that, first of all, I've got enough capacity, right? Capacity feeders, making sure that the feeder space, and there's enough feeder space for the pigs per pen. So you're putting that into consideration, right? And then, what type of my feed? Am I feeding pellets? Am I feeding, grind mix? And obviously there's wet dry feeders, there's dry feeders out there. And I think it was really important what I see a lot of producers doing, which is like, yes, it's really awesome to see, is tracking the attributes, your barn attributes within your record keeping system. It's typically not very hard to do. It's easy, kind of a setup, right? And very low maintenance. But be able to say, hey, with my pigs, right, with these feeders, how are they doing compared to others? Usually, especially on the grow finish side, there's a nice wide variety of different feeder types, water types, ventilation types. Track it, monitor it. Again, it's your pigs, right? It's your environment. It's your, protocols and stuff. It's your people out there, right? Research data is great. Love research. Love research data and stuff. But having that information in your own record keeping system is huge. The other one I'll just kind of call out really quick, outside of just feed, as I'm thinking about remodel, is dead disposal. What am I doing with that, right? Do I have the rendering truck coming and picking up deads? Do I use compost? Am I using incinerators and stuff? Just still surprised, like they're still rendering people are still in business, right? But they are. But obviously not everyone can do compost, and obviously there's material and labor that goes into maintaining that compost site. But the dead truck's not driving around picking up healthy pigs. So do I want them to my site? But those would be my two areas that I would look at.
I think, Brad, another thing would be to look at is, we've learned so much over the last 15 or 20 years, is making sure we have a good employee entry area or visitor entry area. A lot of wean to finish barns, were just built to finish pigs and not so much get people in and out in a very biosecure manner. So I highly recommend to take a look at your, entry and exit employee visitor plans as well when you're remodeling, to make sure that's a adequate and easy to maintain biosecurity from that standpoint.
Great call out. Absolutely.
What are you guys seeing people adding to their barns when they remodel? What are some of the things that they're bringing into those remodels?
A big thing that I'm seeing people getting more interested in would be the smart controllers. So whether that's the Maximus, the Edge, I've got a couple calls in. I've heard that there's a chip that you can put in the expert controller. So somebody that actually has an existing controller, you can make that controller, readable through the internet. So video cameras would be the other one. So utilizing that data and utilizing the technology to get some extra oversight, whether you have labor on site or whether you're just a fanatic like me that likes to track everything and make sure everything's operating like it should. A lot of our barns have radiant heaters, and we've had some people that have requested to come out and look at those radiant heaters versus utilizing the brooder heaters for the wean to finish. So I think that's a trend that you're seeing more people going with, but there is an added cost to it. And I think you mentioned that earlier. It's, new construction, it's still almost $400 for a wean to finish space, and it just doesn't cash flow for most. And I think from what I'm hearing in the eastern Illinois and some of the western Indiana area, there's a little bit of an increase of what producers are willing to pay. There's getting to be a little bit more competition in the eastern Corn Belt. I think our ability to feed not quite as cheap as Iowa, but we're getting pretty competitive with Iowa. We're getting some people that are willing to bring pigs to Illinois, and there's some attractive packing in this area. So I think that's an opportunity, and hopefully that's going to make the pricing in these facilities a little bit better. And the biggest thing going forward that can help us is probably the interest rates. Otherwise, I don't see much getting done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say the smart controllers. That was a good one, Randy. And then the sensors, right? The water sensors, the feed sensors, and stuff. And it's you definitely see a lot more people wanting to be able to have an eye on what's going on with that barn, which I think is a big positive thing, right? I mean, back in my day when I was out in field production, right, it was caretaker contacts me, and then I funnel then to my boss or to the vet, right? And with humans involved directly, there can be errors and stuff, and obviously technology and stuff. Sensors have their issues sometimes as well, but my point to it is like it's great to see that there's a lot of producers out there that want more visibility of what's going on out there, and multiple people can look at it just in case something comes up and some action needs to be taken. So,
What are you seeing on the sow farm side, Adam? Are you seeing people build more pen gestation, more stall? What's kind of the trends that you're noticing?
I think the industry is moving towards more, at a minimum OPG, where animals are in stalls and, for 40 or 45 days and then moving to pens. But I think that's just where we need to go as an industry as well. There are some new barns being built. This year, some plans for next year for some barns being built, but also some remodels. And the farms that I work with, they've got some age to them, but we're proving to ourselves that we can be very successful in an older facility as long as we maintain it and keep it there. And one thing that we've looked at over the last 4.5 years since I've been a part of the farms I'm working with today is really mortality removal. A lot of farms just have a doorway and a hallway, or a doorway at the end of a gestation barn, and it's just level with the ground, and it's really hard to keep that line of separation, a clean, dirty line. So, one thing we've done at multiple farms is put in a true dead drop. Whether we need to dig down a little bit and pour some concrete, or if we've added a load chute, can we add mortality drop at that load chute as well? So it just eliminates the back and forth in and out of the building when we can get the animals to the door and drop them over to a true drop. And I believe that is a huge help to maintaining proper clean, dirty lines with mortality removal. So I definitely highly recommend it, looking at your mortality removal system. And it's not that big of a deal to move a little bit of dirt and pour a little pad of concrete, so you can just better your biosecurity for mortality removal.
Kara, why is pen design so important when we think about building or remodeling?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Adam that a lot of what we're seeing is if they're getting remodeled into pens. And it can be really tempting to just say, like, what's going to be the design that fits the most animals in this space? And I would just encourage people to be really intentional about pen design. And so to really focus on what's going to be the laying area, what's going to be the eating or drinking area. Are you going to have specific areas for loafing? What size pen are you using? If you're putting in stanchions, how long? If you're putting in electronic sow feeders, how many are you going to have? What is that going to look like? I think that the easy thing can be to just draw whatever fits, but that's not long-term the best thing for production and the best thing for the animals. And so, I just would say, like, as people are doing remodels, be very strategic about the kind of pens that you're designing for the long-term welfare and well-being and production of the sows.
Kara, I really agree with your comments on it's not how can I maximize the most animals in the space that I have, because if we provide that animal with the right pen space, pen size, all of the above, we can probably raise just as many pigs with fewer sows.
Yes.
If we do everything right. So that's a great point for you to bring up there.
Yep. And we can fill a pen and then leave them in there because they stay pregnant and they don't get lame and they don't have body condition issues. Then we can just leave them there instead of pulling a ton of them out if we get the right design.
Yeah, I'm kind of upset that the veterinarian brought that up instead of the production guy. So thanks for putting me in my place. Well done.
I'm just worried about the welfare.
Adam, I wanted to revisit the extreme farrowing makeover because that's such a neat idea, but you've also had some really good results. So what's the latest on that? How are things going?
Yeah, it's been extremely fun. I was just the idea behind it, and the teams and the farms, they deserve absolutely all the credit for the success that we have seen. But we do have we started this last December was our first makeover on our first farm, and it's 3 days, 3 weeks in a row. That way we can wean a group of pigs. With the team and myself and the production managers, we all dedicate that time to this farm, and it's allowed us to spend one-on-one time with more of the technicians in the farm, explaining the why, answering questions, showing them how and why we want to do it. And we haven't been through all of our farms yet, but we're getting closer. Um, but we do have 2 farms now that are consistently weaning over 14 pigs per farrow, and then a slug of farms that are well over 13. And what has this done for us over the last year? Our farm visits have changed, where when we go to the farm now, we have teams that are upset. I only weaned a 13.4 this week. I want to be above 13.5 all the time. What are we missing? Come help us get there. It's just been extremely rewarding watching all the farms and the teams buy into the program, the protocols, executing at a high level, and you can just see it amongst the team when we get together. Um, they want to do the best job that they can. They've proven to themselves that it's possible. We can wean that number of pigs. It's just kind of caught on like wildfire for us. So just super proud to be a part of the team, and just want to reiterate all the credit goes to the teams and the farms for buying into our program and executing at a high level.
Yeah, don't worry, Adam. We're going to give you credit anyways, but that's a really great story.
That's fine, because I don't want or need any of it. It's all for them.
It's pretty incredible to see what happens when you empower teams for success and you set them up for it, you give them the tools that they need to get there, and then when they do, you reward them, and you celebrate that. And it just seems like it's a great culture, and that's pretty cool to hear how it's continuing to get better.
Yeah,
Um,
we're next year we're gonna start with some breeding makeovers as well. So how can we get a few more percentage points on conception rate, fair rate, total born, and that's in the works for next year.
Well done.
Okay, well, so I wanted to go there. I wanted to be like, it's hard for me to even utter the words, to say 2026 out loud, because that just means a lot of stuff in my family that I'm not prepared for, if I'm being honest. But it's almost here. So as you guys think forward, what are some of your goals for the year ahead? And why do you think it's really important to set goals as a farm, as a company, personally, whatever it may be? Adam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, without setting goals, you're just kind of are we doing good? Are we not doing good? You know, Goals should be pushing ourselves. We want to set the bar high. And each year of production in a sow farm really should be your best year of production ever. Just we gain a point 0.2, point 0.3 total born just from genetic improvement. That's already a given to us. So, if we really sit back and look at it, is every year should be our best year of production just because of the genetic potential there. But we need to push ourselves, and then we need to track them. And we have a KPI program that we put into place, and we track it every period. And the farms and the farm managers and the teams, they're tracking their own information. I'm not the one responsible for tracking their information for them. And you'll go to a farm and they'll be like, "Hey, we're not meeting our goal in this area. Come help us. We need to reach that." So, healthy competition amongst ourselves just promotes a lot of engagement throughout the farms, and that's why goals are important. We need to know where we want to go.
How about you, Randy?
Yeah, I always say you can't manage what you don't measure. So for us, with multiple different flows, it kind of fluctuates a little bit. The easy one for us to track and set a goal at is mortality, and we've got we're in that 3 to 4% range on wean to finish is what we're shooting for. On some of our healthier flows, we've got one challenge flow that's dealing with trying to get PRRS out of that sow farm. So that one's unfortunately a quality goal for that particular flow is 8%. And so, I think we make our customers happy when we get more pigs to the packing plant. So also reducing the number of culls that we have. And then because we make the feed and we supply the feed, we definitely want to keep track of our average daily gains and our feed conversion. So we've had some good average daily gains in the 1.9 and 1.8s consistently. We working on our feed conversion and trying to get that in line. And that's been, we've been hitting our goals on most of our flows, and then we've got a little bit of work to do on some other ones. And so we're just pushing the envelope on those and keep trucking.
How about you, Brad?
Well, I'm a data guy, right? So like using data to, set goals, I think is important and stuff. And like, when I was out in production and we're setting goals and, let's say that we're averaging, 5% mortality. And then, boss person comes and says, well, we're 2.5% mortality. Well, that sounds great. I think we're all for that, but is that realistic, right? Within our program. And I think, it's a farm by farm or phase of production and, even from different flows, depending on how your production system is to really, again, looking at data to make data driven decisions, because they're those more demoralizing than, oh, you want, a 2.2 average daily gain. Oh, you want less than an 8% premium mortality and less than 5% sow mortality. Well, again, yes, would love that too, but maybe we stair step a little bit, right? And how are we going to get there and action plans to do that? But there's also the production side and there's also the compliance side for goals too, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about health and stuff, but, throwing out having goals for biosecurity, doing those pre-filled checklists, right? Loadout checklists, and having that audit trail, but really just having another set of eyes from a compliance standpoint. I think, and putting goals to that, right? Whether it's, you put a scoring system to some of your questions within there, right? Maybe there's some auto fails where you got to come back in a short period of time to do a re-audit. I think there's a lot of value in a compliance standpoint and trickles right down into production as well. So using data to drive goals, that was imperative.
What about you, Kara?
Oh man, I feel like this is going to be a topic people are going to be like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. But I think antibiotic use used to be like this major topic. And then I feel like after COVID, it kind of fell off. And now I'm hearing a lot more chirping in the industry about responsible antimicrobial use, antimicrobial resistance, tracking our use in the industry. And so to me, I'm a mom. My kids have been on antibiotics several times. I want those antibiotics to work for my kids. I'm also a veterinarian who works in welfare, who feels very passionately about using antimicrobials to improve welfare in meaningful ways in pigs. And so I think one of my goals for 2026 is to try to tie outcomes with use. And so I think as an industry, if we focus on the amount that we're using and the grams per pig or whatever that metric is going to be, but we don't talk about the other side, that's only half the story. We need to do a good job of capturing, I ran these antimicrobials and then I saw a reduction in treatments, a reduction in mortality. The mortality trend that looks like this went like this or went like this. And so my goal is to kind of develop some of these metrics, specifically around feed medication pulses in sow farms. And then also doing some work with individual treatments to sows in sow farms to just try to tie use with the metrics and the improvements that we see in animal welfare.
Well, it's no wonder you guys are all so successful at what you do, because you're definitely thoughtful about every decision that you make and the steps that you take forward. And no doubt I'll see you guys be making some improvements, and can't wait to keep following you guys in some of those goals that you're chasing after for 2026. And I just want to thank you again. I know you guys are busy. It's always fun to catch up with you every quarter and get a chance to just get a little bit of your insights from what you're seeing from your vantage point in the industry. Appreciate your perspectives and the experience that you bring in and share with everybody each quarter. And I want to thank all of you guys for joining us on the State of the Pork Industry Report as well. That's hosted by Farm Journals Pork and brought to you by Neogen. We care about what you guys think. So if you have questions or topics that you'd like to have these experts discuss, please don't hesitate to let one of us know or email us. We would love to be able to address those here on the podcast. Again, stay connected with us at porkbusiness.com, and we'll see you next time.